right, Saturday afternoon. Hope the energy's staying high for this next panel, which is going to be a great one, diving into AltVM scaling Ethereum. We have representatives taking a look at SVM, MoveVM, and the parallel EVM, and a discussion led by Lane, who is head of research at the Near Foundation. Give it up.
All right, hello, hello, hello. We are going to have the spiciest panel of ETHDenver talking about everyone's favorite exciting topic, VM design, GM. I hope you're all as excited about this as I am. Yeah, let's kick it off with some intros. Maybe we'll start down there. Joanna, do you want to just quickly say your name and your project and your VM of choice?
Sure. My name is Joanna Zhang. I am the co-founder and CEO of Soon. So Soon is the most efficient roll-up stack that delivers Solana-level experience to every ecosystem. So our vision is to bring Solana top performance to where the users are, which is in Ethereum, in other ecosystem, and extending that builder culture everywhere. So our choice of VM is Solana.
Shayan?
Hey everyone, my name is Shayan. I'm a developer relations engineer at Movement Labs. Movement Labs, we're building Movement, which is the first move, roll-up, sidechain, whatever you want to call it, on Ethereum. The biggest philosophy behind using Move, the Move language, is that it's inherently a safer VM. The language provides out-of-the-box type safety and allows developers to really build what they want to build without having to focus on basically having themselves accidentally shoot themselves in the foot. So yeah, that's a little about Movement, and yeah, we'll probably talk more later.
Bread guy.
I'm the piece of bread on the screen. I'm head of growth, marketing, whatever you want to call it, at Mega ETH. We are the first real-time blockchain, EVM equivalent. That's what we're striving for. Layer 2 atop of Ethereum.
Last but not least, Mr. Keone.
Hi, everyone. Keone Han from the Monad Foundation. I'm really excited to be here to share more about our team's perspective on scaling the EVM. Monad is a really performant EVM layer 1, but really it's a technology project that's introducing several new technologies, including a new database, optimistic parallel execution, a really performant consensus mechanism, and asynchronous execution to help accelerate the EVM massively while retaining a really high degree of decentralization as well. And about a week ago, Monad launched its first public testnet. So it's live. Anyone can go try it out. Currently, seeing about 200 to 300 transactions per second on testnet continuously. That's continuing to ramp up over the past 8 or 9 days. So it's really crazy and really exciting time to see EVM scaling here.
Amazing. Yeah, really excited to be here. We have representatives from a bunch of important projects, and I think all of us have very different opinions about VMs. I'm excited to get into the weeds. I'm Lane. I'm in a research role at the Near Foundation. Former Ethereum core developer, as it says on the screen. I worked on a project called EWASM, which was Ethereum-flavored WebAssembly, so it was a WebAssembly-based alternative to EVM back in the day. I also, last year, as part of a project called Space Mesh, built a Rust-based VM based on RISC-V from scratch called Athena. So I've been thinking about VM design for a long time. And Near is using WebAssembly, so I know WebAssembly is not up there and RISC-V is not up there, but we can, I think, really speak to all the niches and aspects of VM design. We have very limited time, and we're not going to hold any punches, as we talked about, so I'm going to jump right in. Let's keep this fun. I'll start with a question for Keone. As a former Ethereum core developer, someone who worked on EVM, I'm not completely convinced that EVM will ever be performant relative to some of the other alternatives. I know that you guys have a different vision. Where am I wrong?
Yeah, I think it really starts from the storage layer. I think that a lot of the assumptions about and actual restrictions on Ethereum, basically parameter settings, such as the gas limit per block or the gas target per block of 18 million gas every 12 seconds. These are all predicated upon assumptions that as state continues to grow, there's a really high cost of accessing that state, and the bigger the state gets, the more expensive that becomes. And this is really because existing clients are basically using commodity databases underneath as the data store. So for example, Geth uses LevelDB, or more recently transitioned to PebbleDB, which then uses another tree structure under the hood. What you get is a ton of indirection and a ton of inefficiency. And so all of these assumptions that Ethereum has made, or sorry, all of the choices that Ethereum has made are very understandable, but they're also predicated on the assumption of really slow state access. So with the Monad project, this really started from first principles, looking at benchmarking and so on, and building a new database to address this problem. And then once we addressed this problem, then it became a lot more feasible to introduce several other technologies, such as optimistic parallel execution, such as asynchronous execution, moving execution out of the hot path of consensus into a separate swim lane, so the entire block time can be used for execution. All these other improvements, they become unlocked because of this core assumption that's been alleviated.
Yeah, I think you're making a very important point, which is that the VM is about more than the instruction set, right? There's a lot of other things going on, whether it's the database, whether it's the pipeline. For anyone who has not had a chance to look at Monad Tech yet, I mean, you guys are like really pushing the envelope. Quite exciting stuff, so definitely take a look at it. Brad, you guys are also doing EVM, right? Any response to my question?
No, honestly, like Keone's obviously talking about it pretty well. It's like it is a modular system, and it is not one thing. We share a very similar design philosophy, right? I would encourage everyone here to actually go back and look at a YouTube video of Yilong Li, who's our founder, from about 2 or 3 years ago, right? We have the principle of like measure then build, right? So they spend a very long time benchmarking, as Keone had said. And you could, like, in that, you could see that, yeah, over 50% of the lag time that you're seeing in these traditional EVM systems, REST, right, just as it was, would actually come from storage, right? It's actually not the actual execution of the stuff. So, you know, and I'm just the marketing guy, right? So I'm LARPing a little bit. I'm not writing this code, but if you can go back and you can see that all of this stuff has been addressed, and it's not inherently in the VM itself that is not performant, right? And you have to pair that with what does performance need? What level of throughput do we actually need? You know, we're looking at the current ecosystem today, right? Solana ate the entire brunt of this this bull market, right, with meme coining stuff, and I think they topped out at like 1,500 TPS-ish, like average 800, maybe got up to 3,000 during a high transaction moment, Trump's, Melania, whatever, right? And you have Keone right here coming with Monad, right? They're hitting 5,000 TPS in testnet, right? Not enough. Just to stick with the meme, we're excited to announce that we have successfully achieved public testnet internally to stay with Move. And in that single-threaded, we're already hitting 15,000 TPS. Now, obviously, as a layer 2, we don't have to deal with stuff like consensus. We don't have to deal with stuff that all blockchains have to deal with. But it's not inherently the VM itself that is not performant. And if we're talking about these kind of levels, like honestly, performance is not needed up at these thresholds relative to the current block space demand that is in the ecosystem. So, and we have time for technology to come out and to refine these systems and to continue to grow. So. Yeah, the VM itself is not the bottleneck, at least relative to the capacity that's required today.
Good stuff. It's exciting as someone who's been part of Ethereum for a long time to see projects like both of yours like really pushing the envelope on EVM. But let's look at the other side. So for our friends who chose not to use EVM, was it because of performance or other reasons? Whoever wants to jump in.
Okay, so it's a little bit of both, right? So I was, I guess I consider myself an ETH maxi, starting out as a Coinbase, and later on moved over to Optimism. The one thing that really frustrated me about the EVM side is the lack of user adoption. So when I started thinking about founding Soon this time, actually exactly this time last year, and when I was looking at all the next-gen VMs, right? So the comparison here is, SVM versus Move versus EVM. And so start with the business decision, right? So thinking about the developer sizing, right? So we have the fastest growing, ecosystem on Solana. That was the Electric Capital report, right? Talking about Ethereum builders are declining. Move is moving up, but SVM side has the fastest growth. And then in terms of the actual maturity of the virtual machine, right, Solana has been around for 5 years, EVM or Ethereum has been around for 7, and Move only been around for 2. So from a developer tooling and overall ecosystem vibrancy perspective, it's also, as SVM is going up. And then in terms of the user adoption, I think this is where like the moment of aha comes to play, because the users are really voting with their own transactions, right? When you're looking at the DEX transaction volume, about 80% of the DEXs are currently trading on Solana. And then the actual MAUs, monthly active users, about 100 million on Solana versus 15 million on ETH mainnet, and another 70 million, let's call it, among all the L2s, ETH L2s out there. So that adds up to roughly about the same amount as what we see on Solana. And then the move is about 30 to 40 million. So all of this is to say, right, on the business side, SVM to me is where the user adoption is happening, right? So we want to contribute to moving, SVM to other ecosystems, so we can further, allow the developers to just develop once and deploy everywhere, right? So help them. Our value is as an infra is to bring the developers to where the users are. And then secondly, on the tech side, so throughput, obviously, like Solana, parallel execution is the strongest among all the VMs. So we're talking about, in theory, right, goes up to 650K TPS if we see the Faradancer launch. And then I think all my panelists here, have achieved, 100K plus TPS in theory. But, just to be clear, we're actually the only project on the stage that have launched a mainnet.
Shots thrown, shots fired.
Yeah,
shots
we
fired.
have actual TPS running on our mainnet for last 2 months, not just in theory, and we didn't have the fortune to launch a token before mainnet. So yeah, in terms of like what we're seeing on the throughput side, it's also very clear that it's moving towards SVM. So lastly, on the disadvantage of SVM is the latency, right? So on Solana mainnet has this proof of history consensus mechanism, which has a 400 milliseconds constraint, right? That actually is an issue when it comes to really high frequency, low transaction volume, high transaction volume type of use cases. So we solved that problem with decouple SVM, which is basically to say decoupling the user execution layer from the consensus layer, because as an L2, we don't need consensus. So now we lowered that down to 50 milliseconds or even lower, right, near instant finality, and that unblocked number of use cases like AI, consumer, which we see a lot on our current mainnet.
So your decision to go with SVM, it sounds like, was as much a social layer decision, which is the first part you spoke to, as a technical decision.
Correct.
And then you guys have some additional innovations that are going to like push the envelope on SVM. I want to make sure Shayan has a chance to jump in as well and explain Movement Labs' decision. I mean, it's in your name, right? You guys are obviously like very married to Movement, but why Move as opposed to EVM or SVM or any of the alternatives?
Mm-hmm. So I think our founder Rushi has done an extremely great job on Twitter for being vocal about like why Move, and I think one of the biggest reasons why Movement is choosing to use like steward move forward is because there are like fundamentally challenges within the EVM that like the two projects to the right of me can't solve. So even though both teams are doing a great job at the actual like VM layer, pushing the envelope, honestly, like props to both of you guys and both companies. Don't get me wrong. You guys are doing really cool things there, really admirable things there. In, like Lane said, pushing the envelope forward, moving the needle forward. But I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that we want to prioritize that move is safety, right? So over the past, like 6-7 years, we've seen billions with a B, billions of dollars being stolen to hacks due to stuff like reentrancy attacks, right? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but are any of your projects addressing that? Like, I don't know. Like,
I think one thing to emphasize is that by making execution much cheaper, it's much easier for developers to write a lot more defensive assertions in their code. The focus on extreme gas optimization is very understandable when building for Ethereum mainnet or other environments where gas is really expensive, where adding that extra invariant check is going to cost like another 10 cents every time someone transacts. So really the focus on delivering really high throughput, really cheap gas enables developers to express all of the defensive assertions that help defend invariance within the protocol.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that, so thank you for sharing. But I think at the end of the day, there is like nothing in the VM to protect against it inherently. Is that correct?
I think that at the end of the day, EVM is just a general purpose environment. So in the same way that like when you're writing C++ or you're writing Rust or you're writing other code, like the invariant always needs to be protected by asserting it, by measuring it and asserting it.
Yeah, and like we also are forgetting to talk about the real reason why we're leaning into the EVM generally, right? And then we talked about the tooling, right? That OpenZeppelin has had a fix for reentrancy out there for years now, right? Like so, the ecosystem, the man hours, the amount of time that has been spent on the ecosystem, the EVM specifically, to safeguard against these things has been available and open and public for years now, right? And then, like, yes, you can write new virtual machines that are geared towards specific use cases, but the amount of time and energy that has been put in the ecosystem and tooling and yeah, just reinforcing the ecosystem, like that can't be replicated, right? You can't speed run that, not easily, but it is good that you guys are thinking about that out front.
All right, cool. And yeah, I didn't mean to ask that question like as a getcha. It was more just like I really just didn't know and I wanted to know. So thanks for asking. Thanks for answering, I mean.
I'm happy you asked that. So, and we talked about this a little bit backstage. As a VM designer and developer, as someone who's built multiple VMs and multiple ecosystems, my professional opinion at this moment is that Move is the best wet designed VM out there. However, right, I also contend that developers do not want to learn new languages, which is why I ultimately chose Rust for my last project. Do you agree or disagree? And what are you going to do about the fact that developers would need to learn Move in order to build in the Move ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like this like extends. This is what I was going to say next. Is that definitely there is this friction in learning a new language, right? There is no denying that EVM has the network effects. Solidity has the network effects, and you guys choosing to build on top of that is obviously in your favor, right? But I think at the end of the day, what we see at like the vision we have at Move is that, hey, instead of trying to like fix something that's broken, let's just rebuild it all together. So, you know, the thesis, the philosophy at Movement, and, you know, shared by the other Move chains like SVM and Aptos, is that like the EVM is inherently vulnerable, has these inherent drawbacks, and instead of trying to put band-aids on like this gaping wound, why not try to like fix the problem, address the problem altogether? So I talked a little bit about safety. That's like one of the biggest reasons why at Move we're choosing to use Movement we're choosing to use Move is because it is a lot safer, and I think it's also a lot easier. You know, when I was first starting, I was an EVM developer, and after making the switch to Move, I was like, wow, this is like day and night difference in how like simple, intuitive it is. So like one of the biggest things I'd like to say is that like when like giving like Move 101s, you know, I compare EVM to the MoveVM. One of the biggest things in like the EVM, for example, is that, you know, like let's say if you own an NFT or a fungible token, you know, there is no distinct meaning as to what that ownership means, right? Like in the EVM world, if you own an NFT, you don't actually own it. You just have like this key value pair in like the original contract that instantiated that particular NFT, for example. Whereas in Move, be it the Aptos flavor or the Sui flavor of Move, you know, you have either resources or objects, and the account directly owns these, you know, resources, and it makes it a lot easier, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, these are all just opinions. At the end of the day, it is a lot easier, in my opinion, for developers to intuit what it means to actually own something. If I own like this phone, you can see it's a phone in my pocket. It's mine. It's not like a key value pair, like somewhere in the ether, no pun intended. And I think, like, you know, like just personally, before I joined Movement Labs, I was just a developer, like building on top of Aptos, and it was just that ease of development that really drew me to it. So the way, like the analogy I've seen is that, you know, a lot of these new chains are like boasting like really high TPS, but it is ultimately like building like a multi-lane highways for like tricycle traffic. Whereas I think the biggest problem in Web3 crypto today is not like the lack of block space. I think block space is extremely abundant. I think the biggest problem is, dApps that users can actually use today. And with Move, you can build really quickly without having to worry about shooting yourself in the foot. Obviously, you can still write malicious code, but it's not possible, or it's a lot harder to write such code unintentionally. So it is the fact that you can build more dApps quickly and get to market quickly that makes me personally a huge fan of Move. Why I'm working at Movement Labs today.
One thing to mention really fast. So you were talking about enshrined token standards and knowing the ownership of NFTs and things like that. So I definitely agree that it's really important for the Ethereum ecosystem to accelerate, to just ship new features faster, and to give better tools and ultimately standards for developers. I completely agree with that. I think that the couple of things that are being talked about in the EVM ecosystem, like EIP 7702, so integrating basically smart contract wallets that can be directly tied to an EOA rather than in a separate account. That's a big change. But it takes a long time to socialize ideas and get consensus and ultimately decide and ship. And at the end of the day, the most important thing for our entire ecosystem, our entire crypto ecosystem, is just speed of velocity of shipping, so that we can help grow the ecosystem. So I don't know. Ultimately I feel like although we, you were talking about the big highway with tricycles on it, I think that that's a basic fundamental thing that's needed, because right now it's we're just so far from where real world looks like in terms of real world usage. I mean, from a capacity perspective, it's the meme always, but if you try to put Visa on the blockchain, it wouldn't work right now. And we just need, it's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing in my mind. We have to solve these fundamental problems as quickly as we can, and then keep going up the pyramid higher and higher, and unblock developers.
And what I'm hearing is the XKDC meme of oh, we have 15 standards, they're not good enough, we should do a new standard that's better than all the other standards, so now we have 16 standards. That's Move. And the ultimate calculus that everyone has to do is one, all these things will exist. Developer preference is the best thing, right? Go whatever enables your application the most. But there's a calculus that needs to be done of once something reaches a tier of good enough, it will often outcompete everything else that comes along. And that is kind of the calculus that's being done on our side, where we don't see that there's enough inherent bottlenecks or restrictions in the EVM to restrict us from reaching this good enough and beyond tier, especially being an L2, right? We can rewrite a lot of the stuff. We're doing the parallelization, all the stuff that that Monad's doing, right? So yeah, that's the ultimate thing that you need to balance is once that level is hit, that most things can be accomplished. It's kind of annoying to try to fight against that because you sit there and you see this one chain is succeeding. You don't know why it's succeeding. We've had the best technology over here, but no one uses our technology, and it's because that thing has kind of hit this escape velocity and will continue to propel itself by virtue of existing and being adopted by a lot of people.
Well said. I think we've had a chance to really explore some of the nuances here, the decision space. We're just about out of time, but I guess I would just like to ask kind of 10-second soundbite from each of you. What is the one ask you have of the audience, people on the live stream? What would you like them to do, to look at? How can they support what you guys are doing? Keone, you want to kick off?
Sure. I would like everyone to go to testnet.monad.xyz and check out the app hub with, I think, over 60 apps that are live on Monad testnet already, even though it's 1 week in. And try it out. Try out what a really fast EVM environment looks like. And please send any feedback to me via DM on Twitter. My DMs are open.
Love it. Yeah, Mega ETH. We actually have. I blew my joke earlier. I should have dropped it here. Testnet's coming next week, but we have it running internally. We're really excited about it. Just go to megaeth_labs on Twitter, and you will see the announcements coming. And again, doors open next week, so you guys can see again what a performant EVM can actually feel like, and really see what real time is.
Thank you. And for me, I would say go to docs.movementnetwork.xyz. I think the biggest thing that Move lacks that the other two chains before me don't is that we definitely, and even Solana, is that we definitely have, I think, one of the smallest we develop the pool. developer size, right? And I think that's just due to the nature of us being like a relatively newer chain. So I would definitely like recommend like any developers here to actually like check out Move, how it works, how it compares against EVM or SVM if that's what you're familiar with, and yeah, just to give it a try, see how you like it, and yeah.
So for us, we have a mainnet that's been live, and we have about 40 applications currently live on the mainnet. About half of them are native to Soon. So a lot of the use cases so far has been around AI and consumer, which I kind of call like these microtransactions, right? Like high frequency, low notional type of transactions that were previously bottlenecked by EVM. So the main thing I would love to invite you guys to try out is all the current live applications, as well as anybody that is interested in launching your own Solana, so to speak, with Soon Stack, right? So we have, first and foremost, a roll-up stack that also allows developers to launch their own app chains, which we are super bullish about. And a lot of these current partners are launching their AI gaming chains or AI inference models on chain. I think all of these new use cases that previously they have the choice of between Arbitrum Orbit and OP Stack, right? So now we reduce all that latency down to 50 milliseconds or even less. Can allow and block a bunch of new use cases as well. So yeah, really excited to showcase kind of what SVM can enable.
I'm Elredig on Twitter. My DMs are also open. If anyone ever wants to nerd out about VM design, I love it. I'm here for it. Thank you guys so much. Check out everyone's projects. I think they're all working on really exciting things. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.